to another episode of Bravo Sistah's She Talks web series. I'm your host, Shaw Jones, and today my lovely guest is Lacey Lamar. She is a New York Times best-selling author and a podcaster. Welcome, Lacey.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you for having me.
I am delighted to have you as well. I don't have a bio, so I'm just going to have you tell us who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Lacey Lamar. I am from Omaha, Nebraska. I wrote shout out to Omaha. I wrote a book with my sister, Amber Ruffin, who, y'all, if you don't know who she is, look her up. She's amazing, amazing, amazing. She's the first Black woman to write for a late night talk show. She's actually doing The Wiz right now, rewriting the musical for The Wiz on Broadway. See, I'll be plugging her stuff because that's my baby. That's my baby sister.
You today.
So she's doing a lot of things. But so we wrote a book together. We also have a podcast on iHeartRadio called The Amber and Lacey and Amber Show. It's just us being our hilarious selves and commenting on day-to-day things and what's happening in the world. Okay. But I wrote a book called You'll Never Believe What Happened to Lacey, Crazy Stories of Racism. And if you are a person of color living anywhere on the planet, you can relate to these stories. Things have happened to you. We all have been that maybe one person of color in the room and someone says something bizarre, racist, silly, crazy, and you're like, what? And so I found out being in Omaha, Nebraska, I was in those spaces a lot where I was the only Black person, Black director, in a room sea full of white people, and the things that came out of their mouth. And what I did was, I've always kept a journal, and I was journaling things. I was journaling things only for the sole purpose of, I'm reporting this. You are not going to speak this way in front of me. And to make it easier for the next Black person that comes along, I'm reporting this and you're going to change your ways. That's what I was writing it down to take to HR. And so when I tell you I had stacks and stacks and stacks of journals filled with these comments and these stories and these situations. So when it was time, my sister was like, do you want to write a book about, all these things? And I was like, the book is written. We have everything we need to. So we wrote the book, seriously not thinking anything was going to come of it. It was just great stories to tell. Great, I shouldn't use that word great, but just unbelievable stories to tell and to make other people feel like you're not alone, and to also teach white people, if you read this book and you're doing this, stop. I mean, seriously, that was one of the main goals, was read this book. I'm sure you've done this sometime in your life. Don't do this again. And so we wrote the book and it became a New York Times bestseller, and the rest is history.
It is actually so funny. I mean, it shouldn't be funny. Funny stories for Black people, right? Or any marginalized group. It's not funny. However, if you listen
the way
to
we tell some things are.
Yeah.
I mean, and my sister's a comedian, so she gonna throw the humor in there.
So you have to listen to it on audio. Then you're like, what? So it's actually comes out as a very lovely comedic satire type story, but obviously these are real stories and definitely an issue. And so let's talk a little bit about some of those issues. It is National Women's Month, yay, and it is all things women. And then this Friday is going to be International Women's Day. So as the author of You'll Never Believe What Happened to Lacey, how do you feel you embody this year's International Women's Day theme, which is inspire inclusion, through your writing and storytelling?
Inspire inclusion. I love the theme. I feel like I embody that because I'm telling my stories from the point of view of a Black woman, and not only reaching Black women to say, I'm going through this, this is how I got through this, you can do it too, but also sharing these stories to people, to white people that may be listening, that come across this story and say, we have to do better. I'm a supervisor. I work with people of color. I do this, I do that. my daily interactions with people of color, I need to check myself. Am I doing this? Am I acting this way? I hope that inspires. I hope it inspires inclusion. I hope it makes people realize what they need to do to include others and not to exclude them or make them feel like they're excluded.
Tell us about the moments, because there are stories where white women were saying just like some very derogatory things. And so in those moments, like, how do you feel that you didn't go to HR directly? Because there are some things that you just beeline directly to HR.
Because I didn't feel like I would be believed. Who would be believing these things? So I always was like, take 5 seconds, take 5 minutes. I go to a quiet place. I write. And sometimes I was writing it down as it was happening. They were looking at me like, what are you doing? You're not even paying attention to me. I was like, okay, what are you saying? Okay. Literally taking notes of what they were saying because I need to get this right. And I am going around the room. Okay. Sharon said this to me. She called me a Negro. But David's sitting next to her. He's wearing a blue shirt. It's 9:03 a.m. We're in the morning. Like, I'm taking notes so that they cannot say that I did not say this. I want my stuff to be irrefutable. So I would sit down, write it down. I would never go in hot-headed because a Black woman can't go in like that. They're gonna be like, calm down. No. And sometimes they would be like, this is terrible. You didn't come to me with this right away. No, I didn't. I'm calm. I never went in up here. I always came in and told the worst stuff just like this. Okay, well, today, so-and-so, blah, 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 you know. Now, when that gentleman did punch me in the arm, and y'all get to that, I don't even know if that could be in the second story. I went in a little hot.
These stories were actually reported.
A lot of these stories were reported. Sometimes people got fired. Okay. Sometimes absolutely nothing happened. But I report it so that there's a trail. I report it so that the 7th time when your boss comes to you and says, well, Lacey said, like, this is Lacey's 7th report. What are you doing? That's why I did. Most of the time I knew nothing's going to happen on this. And they think I'm sweeping it under. No, I'm not, because now you have my report that I've written up and I need you to put that in a file somewhere. Like, I would make sure, okay, I have a report that I sent you. I got the email and I got this. So it's a trail. I never let anything, just go, because then the 3rd time it happens, I'm like, oh man, I should have reported those other 2. So now you're on the first report when this person has been acting this way since day 1. So I always tell people, dude, I talk to younger Black women and they're like, this man, at work, he does this. And well, did you tell anybody? No, but I mean, this last time he did it was terrible. See, you could have been on the 7th report. And I'm not even saying the 7th report is going to get him out, but you need some type of trail. You need to protect yourself. And you also need to know that it's okay to be like, I'm not going to be treated this way. It's 2024. You can always get a new job. I promise you, you can always get a new job. When I start a job, I'm still looking. Because I'm like, this could go south tomorrow, especially, and I hate to say this, people out there, especially when you are the only person of color in the room, which has happened to me so many times, where I've been the only Black face in the building, and it could go either way.
Yeah, let's talk about the only, because I've been the only. I think being an African-American woman and walking into corporate, there's more chances than not that you're going to be the only. Yes. And that is a heavy weight that one has to hold on their shoulders, because everything that you do, like to the micro, they're looking at, right? And then they're acting like you are the representation for all things Black, which you are not, right? So it is very discouraging, because you don't have anybody that you can kind of like, girl, this happened, and you have some solidarity with. Or if you have 1 or 2, oh Lord, y'all should go watch. I don't know what that movie is. It's a series on Netflix, on Hulu.
The other Black
girl.
The other Black girl, yes.
like you don't know who you can trust. And so sometimes it's better to be the only. But then when you have one or two, the dynamics are always off. And
Yeah.
so talk a little bit about being the only and what that means, because if we're talking about International Women's Day and trying to include diversity and inclusion in it, oftentimes we fail to look at the dynamics of organizations and how they are not only broadcasting, giving lip service, or integrating diversity and inclusion in these corporations. So as the only, how do you feel as the only? And then what are some of the things that you do to not let yourself just be the only, bringing other people in that part of inclusion, and inspiring inclusion within that particular role? Or what do you not do?
Yes. So being the only is terrible. I'm gonna be honest. When you walk, and sometimes you don't know. When you start a job, you're like, okay, you walk into the meeting and you're like, dang it. My heart drops. It drops when I'm the only person of color. It drops. So there's that feeling of loneliness, I guess. It is a loneliness. And it's like you just feel like, oh, every day there's certain things I'm not going to be able to share. I mean, there just are. If something political or racist happens in the community and it's on the news or something, do I bring it up? Do I not bring it up? If we bring it up, oh, why she's doing it's like and like you said, everything is scrutinized. Everything that you say, that they're watching, they're taking notes, they're seeing if you're going to mess up. And you can say that doesn't happen as a white person listening to this. You'd be like, oh, it absolutely does happen. They are scrutinizing everything that you're doing and saying, and you feel it. It is a physical weight on you. What do I do to bring people in? Listen, if I was ever in charge of hiring people, I'm going to try to bring everyone with me. I'm going to call friends that are not working, that need a job, that come here. I will be your ally. Let's work together. Let's do this. Like, we need to band together. I would I worked in retirement homes a lot, and I was a director of in management of these retirement homes. So we could have different events, and I was like, it's Black History Month, and they would be like, what? You'd bring artists in. I would do as many things as possible to introduce people to anything that had to do with other cultures. And so I did that all the time. So just being proactive in trying to change the landscape of the building, what it looked like, what it felt like. So just trying to make change wherever I could make change in any small ways and any large ways. And I was sitting in a room one time and heard a woman say, Shaquita, well, we're not hiring her, and put it in the trash can in front of me. So that's what I'm talking about. It's hard. It's hard to be the only person in the room.
Let me understand this. So you see somebody throw
yes,
a resume in the garbage because
of a first name.
And we all know that happens. You have people who are naming their children names just because they want them to be resume ready, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a thing. It shouldn't be a thing in 2024. People 100%. Should be able to show up and have indigenous names and be okay with it. Yeah. But that's not where we are.
Not at all.
How do you inspire inclusion through that if you have issues like this occurring? How do you make suggestions, or what suggestions would you have for inspiring inclusion when things like this are happening?
Saying, why did you do that? I love to put it right back on the person. Oh, well, no, I don't know. Explain it to me like I'm 5. I mean, I know
Mm,
that's not inspired, but that's getting to the point. It's making them look inward to, oh my God, I just did that and she saw me and maybe I can do better. Because, not everybody with different names is what you think they are. So
right.
sometimes it takes a little bit of educating someone, which I'm telling you, I hate to do because it's not our job to solve racism. It is the people that are racist that need to work to do the work. And it's other white people that are not racist. Help your people out. Talk to them. It is not Black people's job. It's not people of color to solve racism. It's not. So they need to be doing that work. And sometimes when I tell you I used to be the biggest educator, I'd sit down with someone for hours and try to explain to them why they shouldn't be racist. I don't do that anymore. You can Google it. You can, it puts such a burden on you. It stresses you out. It's not, and if you want to do that, more power to you. That's what HR is for. You need to be doing, and there needs to be better training. I mean, I've worked at places where they did no training whatsoever. It just said, we don't discriminate against, color, race, blah, blah, blah. And that was it. There was no type of training on different cultures. And so workplaces need to do a better job at training, at making things more inclusive and opening their eyes and looking at their organization and saying, how can we do better?
However, the truth be told, is oftentimes top down, they're not doing their work to make the place inclusive. One of the things that I absolutely hate is that organizations have all these fancy words, all these visions, all these values, and then literally the people sitting at the top are not trying to integrate those visions and values into the organization so that you do have a sense of belonging and that you can do valuable work because you can show up and be authentic as yourself. How can we, as women, or as Black women, or Asian women, marginalized women, show up in the space and be allies for one another, advocates for one another? So when these stories come up and you're feeling a certain way, or you've seen something, or you're experiencing something, that we show up for one another and try to combat some of this as a community and group.
Okay. So we need to be brave. It's very hard to be at a job and to see anyone else, doesn't matter if they're Black, Asian, Latino, whatever, you see them being maybe taken advantage of, being spoken to in a demeaning way. You need to say something. I feel like I can't be in a room and someone's talking to someone like, I cannot. I know I have been in a space where Black women have just been like, I ain't losing my job today. You know what I mean? That's never been me. I'll lose my job. I'll lose my job on the spot. I'll have to go into the office and be like, Lacey, what did you say? But I feel like if more of us were speaking up, sometimes, then it shows that it is offensive. Because if you and I are in a room and they're talking down to you and I'm like, well, Lacey was okay with what we said to you. Do you know what I mean? And then it puts it all on you. And now you're the angry Black woman. You're the one that has a problem. You're the one, because sometimes people have not had that training. People have not had that experience being around people of color. So they just talk to you or say any old thing. And it's sad to say, like we were saying, sometimes you have to be the educator. You have to be the one that sticks up for people. And sometimes it's also going to someone. You can go to someone quietly and say, I see that you're struggling. What can I do to help you at work? What can I do? Because sometimes people don't want you to speak up for them. I have found that out. Why did you say that? Now I look like what do you need? What kind of support how can I support you at work? Maybe it's just let's take 10-minute breaks together and chit chat about whatever you need. I tell you, I worked with this woman. There was a white woman there named Linda, and her name was Linda, black woman named Linda, and they called her Black Linda. Black Linda said, Lacey, don't you say something. I've been at this job for 20 something years. You ain't ruining my job.
See, that amazes me that, oftentimes when I look at the dynamics of all things in diversity, in how people show up and things that people accept, because I'm the advocate too. I'm the one like, wait, hold on, who said
I
that?
know. That's me. I can't. I'm not gonna be quiet.
I'll be like, listen, I don't care.
Yes. And a lot of times, like younger women, really, it's harder for them because this might be their first, second job. They're not trying to lose it. They got their little bit of bills. Maybe they just graduated from college. They don't know how it works yet. You know what I mean? And so I always feel like I'm the auntie or the mom, and I got to be like, baby, don't let them talk. They can't talk to you any old way.
It's because people get complacent and they're like, this is the best I can do. Or,
Yes.
I got my raise last weekend and now I'm at a place that I'm comfortable in. And so then they allow certain conversations to be had. They allow people, because you can't call me Black Lynn. What? Wait a minute. What does my race have to do with how I'm showing up in my
And she wasn't, and this is it. She wasn't white Linda. She was just Linda, the other woman. But Black Linda is Black Linda. And they got so used to calling her Black Linda. I was like, we're not doing this today. We're not doing this. You can say her whole name, or you just call her Miss Linda, but we're not saying Black Linda. I changed it though. I changed that's not what we're doing. And it really did.
For you.
She was not happy with me at first at all. I mean, this woman didn't want to talk to me, nothing. But I was like, I can't sit in the room and hear them say Black Linda one more time. I'll be on channel 7. So, and they would be like, Bleh, and then they would look at me and be like, Miss Linda, because they were scared. Because the first time they said that, I lost my mind. Like, oh, no, we're not doing that.
Okay, so to kind of piggyback off of that same sentiment, like even outside of work, because if you're the only, obviously you don't have a community within the organization, but how can we outside of organizations come together and create a sense of community where we can then speak what's happening and then come up with ways to not only walk our walk, but also help others?
I wish that I had the answer for that. I think you're doing a great job on your platform. Seriously, you're doing a great job it's platforms like these, like your podcast, what you're doing will help women tremendously. I love to have gatherings. If I know I can get a bunch of Black women together, I'm like, when are you in town? I'll host my own things. I will make all my friends Zoom. There'll be 30 of us on a Zoom talking about whatever we need to do. Are you looking for a job? I love to match make. And I'm not talking about dating. I'm just talking about, what are you looking for? What skills do you have? Let's build on this community that we have. I love meeting new people and I love making new connections. I know everybody hates the term networking, but I love to do that, to see who else can I plug here and here and here to make our community of women of color stronger. And so a lot of us get stagnant with our 3 friends. And they, the joke is no new friends. This, all 2024 came and everybody's like, no new friends. And I'm like, okay, I get it. But I love to make connections. I love to see what's out there, and young people are doing some amazing things as well. And so you can learn from them. My daughter's 22 and she's constantly telling me, different things that are happening. And my daughter at 22 is so much stronger than I was at 22. She'll be at her job and she'll be like, that's racist. You can't say that to her boss. At 22, I would have cried first, wrote it down, then maybe went to HR. But my daughter's like, oh, you can't say that. So I feel like young people have a lot to say as well.
And that's amazing because, when I think back at 22, there were things that were said in a room that I was like, well,
you didn't
speak up to that? Or so I think that a lot of young people have been empowered because of the people who have stepped up before them, and they don't have to carry the same weight that we used to carry because
Absolutely.
they feel empowered to do so. So let's talk a little bit about that. As what did you do to create such a wonderful woman who can stand in her own power at 22?
Shared my stories with her all the time. Like my daughter knew every story before it was even in the book. She was like, "Oh yeah, Mom, that's a good story to put in," because we really did have to go through and pick. We had so many stories, we didn't put them all in the book. So I mean, I have a sister. I have an older sister who is a Black Lutheran pastor. My mom had a couple of businesses. Like has always been surrounded by strong Black women who don't play around. And so everyone was always telling her, "Oh no, you speak up when this happens." If you constantly have that push behind you, that not only do you need to speak up, but you know, you're wonderful, you're the best, you're bright, you're brilliant. Um, if you have that behind you, you become unstoppable, and you have a voice. At 22, I did not have a voice. I'm telling you right now, I was just trying to show up at work 15 minutes early, do whatever I had to do to keep my job and lay low. And even then I felt I was a little outspoken, but not to the extent of how my daughter is at all.
Well, I'm glad you guys have done such an amazing job inspiring her to be able to have a voice and to use it, because it's one thing to have the voice, but if you're not using it, you're not standing up and being an advocate for others as well as for yourself, then it absolutely means nothing. So my next question to you is, what are you doing now to continue to tell these stories in a way that it empowers women? You have, because you didn't mention the second book. The second book is the world record book of racist stories. So obviously that pal could actually get you 3-4 more books. But what are you doing now, and how is the new book doing?
Yeah, the second book did great as well. It's my stories, plus now it went out to family. So, you know, my mother and father, what they had to face coming to Omaha in the 60s. You know, we went way back and, told their story. It's all of our immediate family members. And then we reached out to people in the community in Omaha, because I had friends that were like, "Oh, well, this happened to me." And I was like, "Come on in the second book. We got space for you." So I love how the second book is not just my stories this time. I have the podcast. The podcast, they let us say whatever we want to say. It's just me and Amber. First of all, Amber is a comedian, so the podcast is us being super ridiculous and silly. At the beginning of every podcast, we are writing the song just off the fly, and it's usually a diss track to both of us, because we are at the end siblings that we like to bicker and be silly. So that don't let that don't let that hinder you from it. But it's silliness. But we also have, we tell some true stories in there as well. And there is a segment in there called Slide Out of Lacey's DMs, because I do get a lot of messages. And I get unbelievable messages. And I'm like, what? So I'm in the midst of writing 2 books. I'm writing a book about bullying, because Amber and I were bullied terribly when we were little. So it's a book, it's more of a children's book, and it's about how to cope with bullying. And then the third book, the other book is about dating. And it's still it really is unbelievable stories, because it piggybacks off of the DMs. I have 3 books worth of messages, but we're going to combine them into one book of just unbelievable things that people say, and the road of me navigating as a single Black woman in Omaha and in New York dating is pretty much the same. Doesn't matter what state you're in. So yeah, they were like, when I share, every time I get a message, and guys, I'm not talking about a relationship. I'm not even talking about meeting the people. It's straight up people sending me messages, and I'm like, why did you send that to me? I have enough. I have a book full of those.
So thank you. But
Thank you.
Lord. Thank you for talking to me today. It was such a colorful conversation. And please keep me abreast of all the things that you have going on. I love your stories. I love both you and Amber feeding off each other, especially on the podcast, because you do have the uh uncensoredness of it all. But
Be bad. I'm sorry.
is there anything, last words that you have for the good people, or do you want to drop? I don't know if you want to drop any information because I don't want them sliding into your DM. And
You can look, my sister says this. You can follow me on Instagram at Lacey Lamar 1. That's all I know about Instagram. But you can follow me on there. Don't slide into my DMs with no mess though. I'm gonna be upset. But look out for our next 2 books. It's probably going to be a little bit, maybe a little less than a year for them to come out. Okay. And again, I just want to say I was shocked when you reached out to me. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on, and I loved it. Thank you so much.
thank you. And thank you. I appreciate you coming on. Y'all, that's a wrap for Bravo Sister TV's web series, She Talks. Please check us out on the next episode. Until then, have a good one.
Yay!